Are you thinking about leaving Calgary for something more affordable but still want a connection to the city? Well, Airdrie might be for you, so we're going to get into the pros and cons of living in Airdrie in this video. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Living in YYC with Mark and Natalie Newstater. Just Mark here again today with this video on the pros and cons of Airdrie. Now, full disclaimer, I actually lived in Airdrie from around 2016, 2017 until 2019, a couple of years there. I absolutely loved living in Airdrie. If you've watched any of our videos, you know that I grew up in small town Manitoba. So Airdrie gave me a lot of small town Manitoba vibes, but the big difference is there's over 80,000 people that now call Airdrie home. So let's do a real quick history on Airdrie and then we'll get into the pros and cons. Airdrie was established in the late 1800s when they were actually building the Calgary to Edmonton Railway. It was incorporated as a village in 1909. Airdrie was incorporated as a city in 1985, and all I can tell you is the population growth has absolutely exploded. It was considered one of the fastest growing cities in Canada for many, many years because from 2004 to 2024, it grew from around 25,000 people to over 80,000 people in a 20-year span. Now, I lived there, as I mentioned, quite a few years ago, but in that time when things were exploding. So let's now get into the pros and cons of Airdrie from somebody that actually lived there. The first pro of Airdrie, in my opinion, and for a lot of people we know and we have helped move to Airdrie, is pricing. We had a whole bunch of clients move there over the past 5 years, and the advantages are so clear. So for example, the benchmark price for detached homes in Calgary was right around $750,000 as of the end of September. Well, what if I told you that in Airdrie for detached homes, that price was almost $130,000 less than Calgary, $130,000. That could be the difference of you actually being able to get into a detached home or not. And that is one of the big advantages of moving to Airdrie, is that massive difference in pricing. In fact, the price was actually $627,200. Combine that with the inventory that has been growing in Airdrie over the past about year or so, and there's some great opportunities even if you're in Calgary now and you haven't been able to get into a detached home and you want to move to Airdrie. So there's pro number one, the massive price advantage of living in Airdrie. Pro number two of living in Airdrie has to be the massive growth that they have been experiencing. Now, this could be a con as well, which we'll talk about in the con section, but for this point, we're going to talk about it as a pro. So with all this growth and expansion, you get tons of new infrastructure, new schools, new roads. There's a great new overpass. One of the big bottlenecks and cons of Airdrie in the past was there was basically only two ways in and two ways out. Well, now as you're coming up Deerfoot Trail or Highway 2, as you're coming into Airdrie, there is an overpass there at 40th that gets you easily to the east or west side of Airdrie, and that is a big advantage. All the new shops that are going in, the proximity to Cross Iron Mills. So you've got Costco, Lowe's, all the shops inside of the mall. Everything is right there for you. You really don't need to go into Calgary for anything. So all the infrastructure is pro number two. And pro number three, and this is more anecdotal, and my experience living in Airdrie was, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it felt like I was living in a small town with all the amenities of living in a city. So let's break that down for a second. When you go to your stores and you meet the same people and your friends are just 10 minutes away, and that was the deal for me in Airdrie, I never really had to drive more than 10 minutes, maybe 15 if you hit one of the trains going up and down Yankee Valley, not Yankee Valley, but crosses over Yankee Valley or Veterans Boulevard, but you're so close to everything. Once you're back home in Airdrie, which we'll get to in the con section, you are really close to everything that you will need. There's some great restaurants there. One of my favorite, if not my favorite barbecue place anywhere, Main Street Barbecue in downtown Airdrie, is absolutely fantastic. Lots of locally small-owned businesses that love serving their community. And so there's a real community feel there. The local high school football teams get really involved in the community, the hockey teams. There's so much there for you to do in Airdrie. There's the Genesis Center with rinks and pools. Everything is really there for you. So that's the third pro of living in Airdrie. But now we're going to get to the first con of living in Airdrie has to be the commute and transportation costs. Let's be real here. You're commuting into downtown Calgary or South Calgary. The time, the cost, the stress, especially in winter or inclement weather, could be a huge con for you. So that's something you're going to need to examine. We always recommend to our clients do a drive during multiple times a day to see if that kind of community is right for you, and that would absolutely apply here for Airdrie. Now, if you work in Northeast Calgary, North Central Calgary, maybe even the university area, because you can get around on Stony Trail on the north end to get to the university. That may be a bit of a different story. Or if you have the flexibility of working from home, that is a game changer, because as we talked about in the pros, you're going to live in Airdrie for typically a lot less money housing wise than you would in Calgary. The second con of living in Airdrie, some of the newer neighborhoods might not have all the infrastructure, and I would honestly say this could be a con in Calgary as well. A newer community that we live in, Yorkville, doesn't have all the amenities. Now they're close, as they would be in Airdrie as well. So just check those things out, right? Where your kid's going to be going to school, and even if they have to get driven or bused, it's really not a long drive in Airdrie. But those are all things to consider. And that would be con number 2, slower maturity and amenities and services in some of those areas. So con number 3 is the fact that when markets tend to slow down in fringe areas around Calgary, they will slow down first, typically. Not all the time, but typically they do. And we have seen that in Airdrie a little more than Calgary over the past year. So it's just something to consider. Are you typically in your home 7 to 10 years plus? If you're more the 3 to 5 year people, then it might be something to consider that when the market does slow down, and we've seen it in the last year, that Airdrie and other communities like Cochrane, Strathmore, Chestermere tend to get hit first before some of the more popular Calgary communities. So here's a few things to help you make your decision. I guess the question would be, does living in Airdrie make sense? Not even from a financial perspective, but for your family, for your job, for your commute, for your lifestyle, right? Does that all make sense? Because we know that the pricing can make sense. The reality is, as I mentioned at the top of this video, there's about $120,000 to $30,000 difference in detached home prices in Calgary versus Airdrie. That is a massive amount of savings if all those other things work out for you. So those would be questions to see if living in Airdrie makes sense for you. So here is the final bonus tip. Thank you for watching this whole video. We have a great offer for you. So just reach out in the email or number listed in the description below, because what we can do is you send us your budget, your preferred commute tolerance, must-have list in your home, and we'll send you a side-by-side comparison of what your money gets in Airdrie versus Calgary. So if that is you, make sure you hit us up in that description below. Thanks for watching this whole video. Hope it was helpful. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.